President Bola Tinubu back to Abuja after engagement in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Federal government advocates increase in made in Nigeria products through sustainable policies.
Today's global economy, trade is the determining factor for any nation that desires prosperity for its citizenry.
Africa takes bold steps towards strategic meteorological action at ongoing COP29.
More than half the population today lives. They struggle without being able to have the same thing that he said, the access. So one of those things we have looked at is the root cause of this problem.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall be tackling new terrorist group.
For nearly a decade now, the northwest region of our country has been plagued by rural terrorists, upending the lives of farming communities and leaving families deeply affected.
Absolutely, Ademola. The situation became so dire that just this past June, a two-day Northwest Peace and Security Summit was held in Katsina State, I beg your pardon, and there were high hopes that the discussions would bring insecurity under control and pave the way for peace.
That's right. Nigerians everywhere share that hope, Victor. After all, insecurity is a concern not just in the Northwest, but across the entire country.
Right. And data from that time showed that 40% of Nigeria's kidnappings happen in the Northwest. Now, experts at the summit stressed that the way forward involves not just talking about root causes, but developing a solid action plan with timelines and accountability.
And here we are, 5 months later, with more evidence of why we need action over words. Last Friday, an attack on the peaceful town of Mira in Auge local government of Kebbi State left at least 15 people dead and several cattle rustled.
It's truly tragic turn of events. Now, reports from the defense headquarters now point to a new terror group, Lakurawa, active in Sokoto and Kebbi states. Now, this group is reportedly linked to jihad factions and instability in countries like Mali, Chad, Libya, and Niger.
And here is the twist. Sources say this group of herders has been on Nigerian soil for some time now. 6 years ago, in 2018 to be precise, locals in the Gudu and Tangaza areas of Sokoto State raised alarm about suspicious activities. The police investigations back then dismissed them as just herders, not anything close to violent.
Well, clearly, the situation has escalated far beyond initial assessments. Now we are hearing reports of this group recruiting local youths in Sokoto with financial incentives.
Well, with threats to lives and property on the rise, security agencies are on the high alert, working to tackle this growing threat. But it begs the question, what are we truly up against with this new group? What coordinated security strategies can we deploy to counter this trajectory? Well, we'll be delving into these issues today on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Ademola Adeoye. Welcome to the program.
And I am Victor Azub, and with rising concerns, groups like the Arewa Consultative Forum are calling for a full reassessment of Nigeria's security strategies and tactics. We'll have much more to discuss, including our newspaper review, right after the news highlights with Dennis Adegunloye. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning, Victor and Ademola. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. President Bola Tinubu is back in Abuja after attending the extraordinary Joint Arab-Islamic Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which focused on the current situation in the Middle East. The presidential plane touched down at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport at 8 p.m. Tuesday. He was received on arrival by a delegation of top government functionaries led by the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila. The president joined other heads of state and government of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the League of Arab States who attended the one-day summit. At the summit, President Tinubu called for an end to Israeli aggression in Gaza, acknowledging that the conflict has persisted for far too long, inflicting immeasurable suffering, and expressed deep concern on the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. He called for the establishment of a dedicated secretariat to implement the resolutions of the summit and urged the leaders to mandate select heads of government to canvass support globally and oversee the implementation of the summit's resolutions. After the summit, President Tinubu also had an audience with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And President Bola Tinubu has congratulated Senator Monday Okpebholo on his inauguration as governor of Edo State. In a message, President Tinubu urged Governor Okpebholo to improve the lives of Edo State citizens and make a lasting impact during his tenure. The president noted that after 8 years, Edo State rejoined the All Progressives Congress ranks and emphasized Governor Okpebholo's responsibility to justify the confidence placed in him and the APC by fostering democracy and effective governance. He encouraged empowering the legislature and vital institutions, highlighting the importance of a robust and independent legislature for good governance. Vice President Kashim Shettima has reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to transforming Nigeria into a strong economic force through policies that will increase the global demand for made-in-Nigeria products. The Vice President affirmed this at the 3rd Nigerian Export Promotion Council Conference on non-oil exports in Abuja.
Shows that in today's global economy, trade is the determining factor for any nation that desires prosperity for its citizenry.
We aim to promote the export of high-quality, value-added products that align with the global best practices and strategically position Nigeria to take full advantage of the opportunities presented by the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
First Lady Oluremi Tinubu, represented by the Vice President's wife, Nana Kashim Shettima, has inaugurated the Chief Habibat Mogaji ICT Center at the Mariam Babangida Center for Women Development. The center is dedicated to women's empowerment through digital literacy and skills training. It is not only a major stride towards bridging the technology gap, but also a posthumous tribute to Chief Habibat Mogaji, a revered figure and beacon of hope for Nigerian women, especially those at the grassroots and market level.
By naming the ICT block after her, we paid tribute to her.
She has lived a life of excellence, she's lived a life of service, and she has empowered and served many people. And I think this should serve as a lesson for all of us.
African countries at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, have launched an implementation plan of the integrated strategy on weather forecasting, with hopes that the continent's capacity to report early warning and action will prevent loss of lives before disasters occur.
That we have, where more than half the population today lives, they struggle without being able to have the same thing that he said, the access. So one of those things we have looked at is the root cause of this problem.
Very good strategy which will allow us, in terms of a continent, to work directly with our member states.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has raised concerns about the emergence of new diseases affecting livestock in the region. This concern was expressed during the 10th annual meeting of the Regional Animal Health Network under ECOWAS holding in Abuja.
Considerable potential, animal resources development in general, and livestock agriculture in particular is impeded by several challenges, including inadequate human resources.
We must prioritize investing in education and continuous professional development.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues shortly with Ademola and Victor after this break. Stay with us.
From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we sway in colors, with undying demand, we make solutions, we ignite passion, yeah. Each ethnicity is unique, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, strengthening unity, we know they carry lives. We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
Hey Nigeria, ready to breathe cleaner air and save money? Let's talk about gas. Drive with CNG, the smart, cost-effective choice. Fill up for less and travel further. Save money, save the planet. Switch to LPG for cooking. It's cleaner, healthier, and better for environment. Say goodbye to smoke and eye problems. Do you know Nigeria is a gas nation ranked 9th globally with over 209 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve? Gas isn't just for cooking and driving. It powers industries too. Cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient. And the best part, conversion centers are popping up everywhere. It's never been easier to switch to gas. Join the cleaner energy revolution. Choose LPG for cooking and CNG for your vehicles. Clean energy for brighter future. This message is brought to you by the Office of the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, supported by the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA.
Time changes, people evolve, businesses adapt. National Advertising Conference, NAC, is here with the 2024 edition.
Yes, it's going to be fully packed. 3 days of top-line engagement with the theme
Navigating the Shift, Technology, Culture, and New Business Models.
Date 13th to 15th November 2024. Venue Abuja Continental Hotel, Abuja. Time 10 a.m. each day.
National Advertising Conference 2024. Join us and together, let's shuffle things up, dissecting the impact of technology, culture, and emerging business models on brand storytelling.
Doesn't sound like something you can afford to miss? Register right now on www.nationaladvertisingconference.com. Clear your desk and save the date, 13th to 15th November 2024.
National Advertising Conference 2024. Be there, be heard.
Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next is Newspaper Review.
Chukwudi Okoli-Ugbaja is seated and ready. Not just seated and ready. You need to tell me the secrets behind the energy you displayed while coming into the studio this morning.
I don't know. You see, if you don't learn to dance from time to time, you're not going to live a happy life. Sometimes happiness is a choice. It depends on how you think. The first thing is love your neighbor as yourself. Once you do that, other things will be added onto you.
Okay.
I'm going to dance out again.
Not taking. Just that you don't do it on camera, so the guys out there don't get to see
I am
you.
infected with happiness. I don't know where it's coming from.
All right.
But a doctor told me that it's actually hyperactivity I'm suffering from. That is an illness. I shut up.
Good morning.
Morning, Debola. God bless you guys.
All right, let's begin with the People's Daily. And the lead story here, Pastor Adeboye, oil cabals crippled government refineries, now working against Dangote refinery. Okay, and above that story, which is just below the nameplate, Lakurawa, crush new terror group now, Ohaneze charges military. And beside that, editors urge government to ease impact on fuel subsidy removal, exchange rate volatility. That one is on page 5. And at the bottom of the People's Daily, talking about the front page, you have that strip of stories, but just before that, 10 people perish in Jigawa auto crash. All right, you can get details of that on page 4. And on the bottom strip, People's Daily Niger Reporter receives 2024 Print Journalist Award. That's fine. And reports of explosion at Jos Market Falls. That's according to Governor Mutfwang, page 7. Ondo Guba, PDP has what it takes to transform state, says Atiku, page 3. And finally, French newspapers sue X for using content without paying. That one is on page 19. And that takes us to the blueprint, which has this major story. Major energy marketers, Nigerians groaning despite low landing costs of petrol. And it has 2 riders. Marketers exploiting citizens, that's according to the NLC. And competition will drive down price, that's according to Ilias. Above that story, in those tiny, tiny boxes, ex-lawmaker DA docked for abuse of office, money laundering, page 15. And in sports, AFCON, Super Eagles hold first training session in Abidjan with 21 players, page 32. And going down, you see that picture story of Senator Monday Okpewolo taking the oath just yesterday. And after that, FG's diversification trade policies boost export growth to 6.9 trillion naira. Interesting. And finally, Benue government approves 30.2 billion naira for rural roads. Page 10. 10 die, 1 injured in Jigawa auto crash. Page 9. No Kebbi village under control of bandits. That's according to an official, page 9. And Okpewolo in as Edo governor unveils Ikilo SSG Oshiomale's son commissioner, page 6. Demola.
Okay, thank you, Victor. I have the New Telegraph newspaper with me. And just above the nameplate, we have Shatima. Federal government's reforms raise Nigeria's trade balance to 6.9 trillion naira. Details of that story can be found on page 3. Cardoso, bank recapitalization will boost financial inclusion. Details on page 25. And below the nameplate, we have adopt Senator Kalu as consensus candidate in 2027. Group tells political parties. Details of that story can be found on page 5. President orders state burial for late Chief of Army Staff, Lagbaja. Details of that story can be found on page 2 and 28. Alleged 1.3 trillion fraud, EFCC yet to establish any case against Okowa Aid. Details of that story is on page 2. Goba Paul Ajayi has what it takes to transform Ondo. Article. The details of that story, it's on page 6 and 30. Lakurawa's, that's the headline, containment operation begins as security agencies get marching order to crush group. Details of that story can be found on page 4. It says, presidency not happy, bent on neutralizing the new terror gang. Sources as Sokoto police engage government, traditional rulers, and other stakeholders. Then the other stories, we have the why 40% of 2024 NECO candidates may not access tertiary institutions. Details of that story can be found on page 6. Hamatan, NCDC raises the alarm as meningitis, Lassa fever threats rise. Details of that story can be found on page 2. Ease fuel subsidy removal, exchange rate volatility impact, call for targeted relief measures to save nation's economy. Then we have the NCAA bans pilots crew flying for 2 airlines. Experts seek license revocation over practice. Details of that story can be found on page 2 and 6. And the Edo Goba, Okpebolo sworn in unveils 5-point agenda. Details of that story can be found on page 5, 6, and 7. Chooks.
Demola, it's a good thing that Lakurawa is already having one foot put in the fire there. The security forces are saying, we are ready for them. And that messaging is very important. That body language is very important. The only thing I tend to regret is that Nigeria is not having the best of relations with Niger. Because when you want to deal with a group like this, trans-border cooperation is very important. When we regretted the coup that happened there, many people did not understand when we said that it's going to bring about a sub-regional headache. It's happening now. But I trust Nigerian soldiers. They stopped the wars in Liberia and Sierra Leone. They did. Ikomok did. We're not boasting. They can also do it domestically. It's just that an asymmetrical war is a big problem. You're not all coming out on the field of campaign, you know, and people are facing each other on the battlefield. So it's always a problem. But having said that, please quickly, a point of grammar again. Nigerian editors should help our children pass their exams. When you give marching orders to somebody, it means you have sacked them from their duty post. They have only given them orders to do something. Let them help our children pass their exams. Okay, very good. Quickly, Nigerian editors are urging government to ease the impact of fuel subsidy removal. Remember, one of the things we said here, when the foreign exchange market was floated, was should government not have staggered it a bit? Why subsidy removal and floating the exchange at the same time? But then government would always tell you that they have done their research.
And they have their reasons.
But we as the conscience of the society would always speak up. Government has not done anything unconstitutional. If you remember, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu said at the time, there's no point reversing the tax reforms. Rather, let it go through legislative process. He was making a point. People will have opportunity. They have representatives to either shoot it down or support it. That's the path of democracy. So government would always go into their cornucopia of knowledge and tell you a few things. But that's not going to stop us from saying, please, dear, take it easy on the Nigerian people. Very important. But President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is also telling us that the hardest days are behind us. And you just read there that reforms have raised Nigeria's trade balance up to 6.9 trillion naira. That's Shetima talking. I'm not an economist, but something is already happening to the Nigerian economy. For the first time, we declared that the money we got from exporting exceeded money we spent on importing. The point here is that that is happening at the macro level. It has not percolated down to the victors of this world, to the chukudis of this world yet. Prices are still doing a mad dance, not the kind of happy dance I did when I came in here, in the marketplace. That is the problem Nigerian people are having. But as I keep on telling people, hope is what you get drunk on when there's no alcohol around. Let us never lose hope. The green, white, green will continue to fly. Journalists will continue to hold government accountable to the people, but they must do it in good faith. Nigeria is moving. It's not going to happen in one day, but I think we're making progress. Let's just...
I'm happy you remember the victors of this world, because...
I know you're a poor man.
At the end of the day, whatever happens, you see, the common man,
I know,
the ordinary Nigerian,
I know,
views it from the lenses of how it impacts his or her pocket.
I know.
How does it make me increase the garri I can put on the table? So when you say, for instance, this one rates Nigerians groaning despite low landing costs of petrol. I had a colleague yesterday when, they were talking about we will buy from Dangote, we will do this and that. I said, look, all this is grammar. The important thing is, how much will I buy a liter of petrol at the end of the day?
At
That's
the end
what
of the
matters to the
day.
common man.
Victor, we said the other time,
I
am one of the
I
people.
think Dangote and the marketers are beginning to talk now.
Oh,
so
yeah.
by the time
Well, they have an agreement.
They've started talking.
But that agreement has to yield something tangible
so
for the common
we
man.
are hopeful.
Victor,
we are hopeful that at least something better will come out of that agreement.
Our creed is factuality, fairness, accuracy, objectivity, and balance. When a journalist departs from those pillars, I quarrel with them. We must also accept the fact that the market forces government talked about are beginning to take effect. I told you about one man on Kershi Road that was selling 1,200 a liter. He has dropped it to 150. Then the people selling 150, they've dropped to 130. You now come, you don't see more than 3 keke. Well, not me go tell you now, make you take your tongue, count your teeth. You understand? What I'm telling Nigerian people is, better days are coming. We sang it the other time, when Tinubu had the broadcast. It will get better. But Nigerians have to think humanity that unites us first before all those primordial things that divide us. If we come together, you're going to find out that we can weather the storm. I have incurable hope. That's nature. Your character would always rub off on the things you say. I'm a natural hope giver, You tell me things are bad, I'll tell you how they are good. It's just that way. And if you do that, sometimes it's not the food you give people that matters in life. It is how you talk them into believing that tomorrow could get better. Messaging matters. Government has to pay heed to this.
Okay, the way you say it, the impact it will have on the people.
Yeah.
But I believe that it will get better because by the time all the government policies and programs on transportation come on board, you will see that there will be changes.
CNG buses are being given out.
But now that you've mentioned transportation, I'm not sure why we are not looking at the rail sector as the major alternative, the better alternative to the skyrocketing cost of air travel. Because just imagine that you could go by train from Abuja to Lagos. You know what that does? Just imagine that from the capital, you could go by train from Abuja to Lagos and then begin to talk about from Abuja to other capitals in the country. Do you know what that means?
And you begin to ask yourself, is it that Nigeria could not afford having the tram in place, having the railways in place?
Now that if you have to travel, you go from Abuja to Itakpe, from Itakpe to maybe Delta, so you begin to connect. It's a bit
I agree.
burdensome.
There have been so many false steps, but it is never late to mend.
Yes. Well, it is never late to mend. Thank you very much, Chuks.
It's never late to tell me to get out. I know. Thank you, Demola.
You promised us a dance. You promised us a dance out of the studio. Please
you don't
do
have
so.
to dance on
I'm
camera,
trying to contain this pain, please.
And a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee will be waiting for you.
All right,
there.
Chuks, thank you so much for coming. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll take a break now. Good Morning Nigeria continues after the break. Stay with us.
Come and see the cool sales in here. Everything's on discount.
Yeah, I saw it already. But you know what? I've been thinking we should focus more on making things than just buying stuff.
What? You mean we shouldn't go for these awesome...
No. Hear me out, Nkechi. We are always chasing after new toys, upgrading gadgets, and buying things we don't really need. But what if we use that money to create something special?
Like what?
Anything! Instead of getting another fancy pair of shoes, we could start our own cool business together.
You mean we should become entrepreneurs?
Exactly! We could use our smart thinking to make something awesome for people. We might even make a big difference in our neighborhood.
You know what? You're right. We can learn a lot about money too.
Awesome! Let's be the heroes of our own story. Together, we can make a big change and break free from just buying stuff all the time.
One right action can make a big difference, right?
I think Amaka should just move out of the house. Yes.
No. Standing out of the house is not the right thing to do.
Oh, there you go again with your sentimental family stuff.
Baby, if our aim is to stop this affair, it is best achieved under our roof.
You do something terrible and you'll be acting innocent.
What are you going on about?
Don't ask me that question again. You couldn't even control yourself in the presence of our visitors.
What are you accusing me of, woman?
My son, I don't know how serious you are with my daughter, but there's something that needs to be done urgently before you move any further.
Anything, just anything, just say it. I'm ready to do anything.
There is a spell that needs to be removed.
A spell?
Family forever, the story of our lives.
You have to move from the point where you protect and defend your religion to a point where you also recognize the rights of the other person, of the other religion, and protect it. So if I am protecting my own territory and my own people and trying to emphasize their rights and protect their rights, I should also be thinking about how to protect the rights of the others.
Both Islam and Christianity recognize and defer to God, and both recognize the temporariness of the life of this world, and that ultimately we all go back to God for the day of reckoning, when everybody will render an account of his life on this temporary abode.
Hey Hey Nigeria, ready to breathe cleaner air and save money? Let's talk about gas. Drive with CNG, the smart, cost-effective choice. Fill up for less and travel further. Save money, save the planet. Switch to LPG for cooking. It's cleaner, healthier, and better for environment. Say goodbye to smoke and eye problems. Do you know Nigeria is a gas nation ranked 9th globally with over 209 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve? Gas isn't just for cooking and driving. It powers industries too. Cleaner, cheaper, and more efficient. And the best part, conversion centers are popping up everywhere. It's never been easier to switch to gas. Join the cleaner energy revolution. Choose LPG for cooking and CNG for your vehicles. Clean energy for brighter future. This message is brought to you by the Office of the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Gas, supported by the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NMDPRA.
All right, thank you for staying with us, and good morning, Nigeria. Now, to begin our conversation, which is on tackling the new terrorist group, let's take this background report by Ibrahim Dan Hamidu.
Nigeria faces a resurgent terror threat. Lakurawa, this militant group is not novel. It has been dormant since 2017's domestic intelligence crackdown. But after 8 years, Lakurawa has renewed violence and brought fear, leaving death and displacement in its wake. Lakurawa emerged as a group of herders from the Sahel, identified with their Semitic language and local dialects. Initially, they posed as protectors, but soon went rogue and imposed perverted Islamic laws and demanded funds and cattle for weapons. Their radical ideology and violence mirror Boko Haram and ISWAP. Targets include military outposts, civilians, and rival groups. In August, Lakurawa killed 3 soldiers in a brazen attack on a Sokoto military outpost, and their latest onslaught of 15 civilians in Kebbi State. The Nigerian military has declared 9 key leaders wanted and designated Lakurawa a terrorist group. With Lakurawa's guerrilla warfare tactics and recruitment incentives, what comprehensive strategic counterterrorism initiative will the government activate to control this security challenge? Our guests will discuss why Lakurawa is charging head-on and the best strategies for the government, military, and intelligence community to tackle terror groups in Nigeria. It's tackling time against terrorists on Good Morning Nigeria.
Tackling time against terrorists in Nigeria. Thank you, Ibrahim Dan Hamidu, for that background report. Now, joining us for discussion on that topic, let me introduce in the studio Dr. Kabil Adamu. He's a security risk management expert. Is here as usual. Dr. Adamu, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Also, we have Abutu Yaro, retired AIG Zone 13, former CD CP Edo, Zamfara and Imo State, a CP Federal Operations Commander and Counter-Terrorism Training School, Port Harcourt. AIG Yaro, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good to have you again.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Victor.
All right. Let me also welcome via Zoom from Jos, General John Temlong, who is the first commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force, a former president, Alumni Association of National Defense College, and who is also a security consultant. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you, General, for joining us. Okay, let's kickstart our conversation this morning by establishing the origin of this new terrorist group. Dr. Adamu, from the report there, we gathered that this actually, the community actually noted their activities around 2017, which they reported to the law enforcement agencies, but the profiling that was done did not, give any, report of any danger, forthcoming. But looking at the objectives of this, group, we have found out that they are dangerous. All right. So how does this group, differ from the existing terrorist group like Boko Haram and others?
Thank you very much. I think your correspondent captured the issue when he used the word radicalization. There are groups that are itinerant, and even by their name, a lot of studies have been conducted, and the studies have narrowed down to suggest that the name Lakurawa is derived from a French word that speaks to attempt to recruit. In other words, those who are attempting to recruit. And so it's very possible that this were a group of itinerant persons who were involved in proselytization, preaching the version of Islam that they understood. And then along the way, they became radicalized. Now, what is radicalization? Radicalization is adopting a version of a faith that promotes and encourages violence. And so procuring weapons, acquiring weapons, and then using force to either convert or in certain instances to instill the type of administration that they believe is the better one than the one that exists in the certain communities. Now, from history, we know that because of the porous border between Nigeria and the countries surrounding us, if we narrow down on Niger Republic alone, the borderline is about 1,400 kilometers between Nigeria and Niger. Now, over time, historically, there has been movement between Nigeria and Niger, between Niger and Nigeria, sometimes for legal purposes, other times for illegal purposes. Okay. Now, it's specific reference to this group. It appears they used to come either for hardened purposes or for ideological purposes to preach religion, or sometimes to markets that exist in those locations, running from all the way from Kebbi to Jigawa. There are several markets, international markets, that so along the way, it's very possible that this group became radicalized. There are so many moving parts to this story. A lot of research is ongoing at the moment. So it's possible they became radicalized. And why did they become radicalized? Any student of counterterrorism who is looking at the situation in the Sahel region would know that radicalization is a possibility. The two major jihadist groups in the world, which is the Islamic State and the Al-Qaeda, the hotspot for their operations at the moment globally is the Sahel region. And at the last count, there were about 30 groups that are active within this region. And the consequences of the activism of this group has led to at least 2 to 3 coups within that region. Mali, 2 coups in Mali, where security was cited as one of the reasons. Recently, in Niger Republic, security was cited as one of the reasons. Of course, we know what is happening in Burkina Faso at the moment, where about 50% of the country's territory is in the hands of these guys. So once there are groups that are moving around that region and interfacing, as it were, using the same gun-running channels, the same routes that have been established for movement of transhumans and several other activities that they do, then the possibility of interaction between these jihadist groups, the Al-Qaeda that I mentioned, and the Islamic State in West Africa province, as well as the one in Greater Sahara, the possibility of interaction between them and then the consequent de-radicalization is extremely high. So that is possibly where this de-radicalization happened. And then from a benevolent group that was moving around, either for economic purposes or just common proselytization, they became radicalized. And from that radicalization, we started seeing instances of attacks. And just like your correspondent mentioned, there have been several of such instances. In one instance, it was with the community. Then in the most recent instance, it was with the Nigerian security forces. So in terms of origins, their origin is from the Sahel. Most of them are either Tuaregs or the other natives that are domiciled within the Sahel. Of course, over time, they may have recruited from locals within Nigeria. Their activities is bordered around parts of Sokoto State, that especially Tangaza local government, down to parts of Argungu and other local government within Kebbi State.
All right. Thank you. Let me thank you for your opening remarks, Dr. Kabir Adamu. At least you've given us an idea of, they were there, they've been there, and our background report suggests it, that they've been there for quite some time, only became radicalized along the way. But let me ask AIG Abutu Yaru, retired, do we have an idea how they came in the first place and for what purpose? Yes, we are beginning to establish they weren't this bad when they came in, but how did they come in? For what purpose did they come in?
Thank you very much. Dr. Kabir has incisively laid out the issues and stake with respect to their emergence on how they come in. We are consolidating of that and we are having the same agreement. But in addition, the narrator or the reporter even mentioned in the earlier reports that this group were known or unknown to the communities within the fringes of Sahara. And initially, there was a kind of invitational treat when some of these communities were having uncontrollable security challenges, like communities in Gudu local government, in Silame local government, and in Tangaza area. Community leaders actually made overtures to some of these people who initially came in aid of improving security in form of enhancing local enforcement. And later, religious intonations were introduced, and later, compensatory platform in form of taking commodities from the locals, in form of taxation, in form of enforcement, or some strict variant of religious belief became part of it. And naturally, it is expected that if you unwittingly invite elements from distant lands whose orientation and preferences are not really very known to you, only the pretentious outlook is the one that you need as a palliative intervention in your local circumstances, you will certainly lose control. Like a doctor said, these people originally came from the Sahel region. And the Sahel region has become the hotbed of insurgency in Africa, or in West Africa, so to speak. We all know the issues surrounding the Sahel, as doctor said. Our Sahelian first and the most intimate Sahelian neighbor, Niger, we've been together with them for more than 1,000 years of Nigeria history, regardless of the colonial invasion of Western Sudan, which is this part of West Africa. In spite of the colonial differentiation, we've been very much together with Niger for more than 1,000 years, so to speak. Of course, majority of people in Niger, they speak our language. And we have the same religious platform, so to speak. So the inflow of persons from Sahel into the fringes of our country is a matter of serious concern. And lately, of course, as some scholars have put it, the fact that in recent time, arising from the political situation in Niger, it has been a little bit difficult for us to have a kind of smoothness, security, convergence activity, which in any case too provided the lacuna for the insurgents of the moment. The point is that the people are here, and it was easy, or it has been easy for them to get here because we have been very contiguous people, so to speak. And when they move around, it is difficult to really see them within the context of strangers completely, when strangers in quote, because we are somehow contiguous in terms of cultural affinity. And that is why our relationship with the Sahel must be treated on the first burner. The present trend, whereby most of the Sahelian states of Niger, Mali,
Chad,
and Burkina are moving towards different security direction and political direction, calls for concern. And in the interest of our national security strategy, we need to do a reboot of relationship, particularly with Niger. We need to reboot it for our strategic security interest, because the ravaging insurgents or elements in the Sahel are deeply playing on Niger and Malian territory. If you look at the map of our West Africa, Niger is contiguous to Mali. Mali is contiguous to Burkina Faso. And then we even have one axis we call Le Pacto Goma, which is the central part of the Sahel, whereby all elements of insurgents from different parts of the world, they really incubate there.
Le Pacto Goma.
Yes, Le Pacto Goma is the borderline that traverses the borderline of Niger, the borderline of Burkina Faso, and the borderline of Mali. It's a region, it's a regional enclave, Le Pacto Goma. I spell it, Le Pacto, L-I-P-A-T-A-K-O, then hyphen, Goma, G-O-U-R-M-A. That is the epicenter of Sahelian insurgent breeding arena, which even these three countries are finding it difficult to really control or influence. And the fact too that these our strategic neighbors are Francophone, and the influence of France in Africa has dwindled. In the sense their presence or cooperation with the Francophone countries has dwindled. It makes the situation to be to be higher than we can really imagine. And it calls for concern. That is the area I believe that as a country we need to have to reboot our perspective with respect to how we manage this our Francophone neighbors, who of course are drifting, and their drifting is going to increase or create more ground for Sahelian insurgents to grow wider and become, and we are going to impact on us much more.
Okay.
So, for now, containment measures are necessary. While internal containment measures is apt, strategic engagement with our Sahelian neighbor as a country is even more relevant. Because if it is not done, the threat we face will come in more unmanageable perspective.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, AIG Yaro, for your opening remarks there. There is need for us to reboot our relationship with some of these countries, and containment measure is very paramount. Let's go to General Tem Long. General, we just like they have spoken in the studio, we looked at the origin and the objectives of this new terrorist group, and just like AIG said, there is need for the country, Nigeria, the government, to reboot relationship with some of our neighboring countries, especially around the Sahel region. Let's look at the implications of this new terrorist group for national security. What do you think are the implications?
Well, thank you very much. The implication on national security is obvious. You would have seen that the communities where these people are operating already are suffering from the effects of their activities. The communities, the armed security agencies, the armed forces have become under severe attacks from them. And so they are expanding and moving down south. So it's obvious that if they are left unchecked, the whole of Sokoto and Kebbi states will become very much engulfed, the activities. Some local governments already are under their control. So to that extent, they are quite a very serious threat. But what is even more concerning is that it appears we are not learning from history. If you see the origin of how they came in, some of them were actually from some of the literatures that are available so far. Like Kabir said, there's a lot of studies being done on them, but for some of those available already specifies that some of them were invited by some of the herders to protect them, and people were moving anyhow. I remember in 1998, when the National Joint Task Force was established, the northern parts of Borno, Yobe, and some local governments in Borno had gone deliberately across to Niger Republic and recruited the Fulani militia force, the Fulani milice that was set up by the Fulanis in Niger to help them tackle the activities of the Tubo Arabs, rebels, who are ravaging them because the Nigerian government was not able to protect them. And so to that extent, you could see it repeating itself here. People are coming because of the inadequacy of security in our own environment. And for the fact that when they were there, we had to first of all deal with that threat first. Clear them out of our territory to regain our territorial integrity. So you have the same thing repeating over 20 years ago, people infiltrating in the country, and they are being seen. They said about 2017. What has happened to them? That's the question we should be asking. What happened when we notice some of these people, even if they are not violent? Because the problem is that the moment you allow foreigners free reign into your country, they can turn into anything. In the first place, they believe in stealth and secrecy. So if they come in, they will come in as friends. They will come in using religion. They will come in using all sorts of things. And that's why I've kept saying that, I've been saying that we must separate national security from religion and from our tribes. Because the question of saying these people are our tribal people, they are our religious people, let's welcome them, and they are foreigners who come in later on and turn against us, forgetting that we are the same religious people, same people of the same tribe, then we must learn to separate these things seriously and start dealing with these situations probably as national security problem. The problem that will bring sentiments of religion and tribe into these things, we have lost it. We must change this scenario. And so it is important that once we notice some of these things happening, we must take decisive action against them. And even those who are collaborating with them, they are known. If you go now and do some proper research, you will identify those who harbor them, those who are using them for their own selfish interests, and those who provide the wherewithal for them. In the first place, when they arrive, they don't live off the land. They live with the people. Some people welcome them. They buy their foods from citizens of Nigeria. They buy medicine for their animals and for themselves within Nigeria. They buy spare parts and petroleum oil and lubricants for their machines from Nigerian market. and also all their requirements, they buy them from people. And everybody in the community will know that these are foreigners. So what have we done about that? And I'm sure there were security operatives embedded in those local governments. What did they do? What action did they take? Did they take anything that is appropriate? If they did, who did they send these reports to? What about the civil authorities that were sent to them? What action did they take? I think we need to start interrogating some of these things and punishing people, sanctioning people, no matter how highly placed they are. Once they play with national issues of national security importance, that turns to engulf us and put us in this very bad state. I believe that we need to start putting sanctions in place. The DSS that were there, the police that were there, the civil defense that were there, the immigration and customs staffs were there. Some of them, what happened when this happened? What happened to the reports that came off the line? Did the reports get up to the National Security Advisor, the JIB, and if it got there, what happened? So it's very important that we must start looking at these things. And you see, it's something that we must learn. Like I said, if we don't learn from history, we'll keep reporting history. In 2018, when I was the president of the National, of the alumni of the Association of the National Defense College, we organized a national security seminar with the theme, Fighting Tomorrow's Warfare Today. And we identified that non-state actors are going to split, they are going to mutate, they are going to increase, and they are going to come in their numbers. And the government must step up their game and put up one. Intelligence must be paramount, because at the moment you are able to nip them at the bud, you are able to stop them. But once you allow them to come in and start getting control and gaining followership within the society, it becomes quite difficult for you. We also identified that the Boko Haram group and the rest were going to split into splinters, and they did. We identified also too that what we needed to do was that, like the AIG stated, is that what is our strategic interest with our strategic neighbors? We must continue to redefine it. Look, what are we talking about? Even if our interest supersedes what we think of defending what? If the Nigerian government is a military regime and it is in our own strategic interest to make sure that we collaborate with them for our own national security, we have to. But when we allow them go because we think they are Faria people, they are this thing, the consequent event is what we are having, because they will have unchecked this thing. But thank God, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Musa, some months ago was in Niger to reestablish contact with the Nigerian authority, particularly about their involvement in the Multinational Joint Task Force. I think we need to go beyond that. We need at the political level to engage the Nigerians, engage them in such a way that we keep these people out, that allowing them to push them into our country unabated, and they start creating more serious problems for us. I think what we are running from is going to be more difficult for us to tackle, because the moment we have these terrorist groups moving in and out unchecked and operating within our territories, it becomes something that the whole country will be engulfed with terrorists and bandits all over the place. I think we need to do about that. Then one thing we need to check is that what are their sources? We must go beyond people thinking that they have so much arms. If you see the machine guns that they are playing with and the ammunition, these are expensive. Who are those financing them? Because terrorism financing is an international crime. And so we can go around everywhere to see that they are blocked. Even in Nigeria, the only time they mentioned those who are financing Boko Haram, that was all. Until today, what has happened to them, we don't even know. We must track terrorist financing. We must track their sponsors. There are those, no matter how highly placed they are here, national security does not respect anybody. Even if it's the president that is involved in sponsoring terrorist activities, it must be brought to his ideas that, look, your actions are this thing, but as the commander-in-chief, he has the sole responsibility of protecting and defending the Constitution and our territorial integrity. So it behoves on him to make sure that everybody in authority down the line must be reined in. And this idea of saying that state governors, when you see some of them behaving as if they are countries within their own, must stop. Because they definitely have to work within the national security context. If there is no country, there will be no governor. If there is no state right now, how many of them can move freely into those local governments that are under the control of those places? So it means they don't even have control over that area. So what are you? You're no more governing that area. It has become a space governed by a non-state actor. So definitely they must not be cowed to remain in the state capital.
All right. Thank you very much, General Temlong. And we've tracked the emergence, the origin, down to, General Temlong's contribution. But let me introduce, before our next question, a guest from our Sokoto studio, Murtala Rufai, who is from the Usman Dan Fodio University in Sokoto. Thank you for joining us on the program. All right, can I now take you on straight up? You've listened to, you've had the benefit of listening to the other guests in the studio and outside of it. And some people have said that this could be a failure of intelligence from the beginning, not being able to determine the intention of these people when they came in. And then along the line, when they became radicalized, to borrow the word of Dr. Kabir Adamu, we were again not able to say, okay, this is where these people are headed. Is that what it is for you? A misdiagnosis of the situation and the intentions of the Lakurawa group?
Thank you very much, and good morning once again. My candid opinion about the Lakurawa, they came in as a radical and violent group with, quote and unquote, their own Islamic teachings and also their own Islamic ideology. And the unfortunate thing is that they don't have a very good understanding of the religion. Neither do they have an understanding of what exactly they want to do. As we speak, it is actually a very old threat about that started around 2017, 2018 here in some part of Sokoto states. They operate largely along the border. Today they have their presence and influence in about 10 local government areas across Sokoto and Kebbi states, and they are basically and fundamentally operating along Nigeria-Niger border areas. And the fact of the matter is, the locals will tell you, they preach religion, they preach their own ideology and their own teachings, but they seem not to even understand what they are actually into. And what do we see? We see people from different nationalities. They are mostly not Nigerians. They are from Niger, from Burkina Faso, from Benin, from Mali, and other parts of the Sahel. But the most interesting thing about it is that, again, they don't even understand the language of each other. That is very clear. And in some part of Sokoto where they operate, in these local government areas that I'm going to mention, around Ilela, around Tangaza, Godu, Bale, Benji, Silami, down to some part of KB, particularly in Kangiwa, in Augi, and as we speak today, they are in some part of Argungu local government area. I think this is a threat, and a very fundamental threat, not only to Nigerian security, but to international security, and also it is an international threat. In my own opinion, the fight against these people requires a robust and elaborate operation. We don't actually need to engage in cosmetic security operation in these places because they have entrenched the communities, they have gotten the acceptance on the part of the communities. And what do we see? This same group today have created a large issue of ethnic polarization. The Hausa and the Fulani are increasingly becoming polarized because of the penetration and activities of this particular group. So in my own opinion, right from the onset, 2018, 2017, 2019, they came in as a radical and a violent group, and they've also been unleashing terror on these border communities. Initially, they came with the idea of saving the communities from the activities of the bandits. But what do we see today? They have taken over the ungoverned and undergoverned rural spaces across these 2 states that I'm talking about. And the expansion is increasing by the day. These are only areas that we know, and I'm very sure there are quite a number of areas that we don't know, that we are always trying to find out what is going on. Because the rural areas have submitted in some cases to them, not because they want to do that, but because they feel they don't have alternative governance, meaning these areas are ungoverned and undergoverned. And you can see traditional authorities, even yesterday I was relating with some of them, they said they have no option. You've seen people with military grade weapons. You wake up in the morning, you see them at night, you have no option other than to follow them. And that is what is actually going on in these rural areas. If you take, for instance, our local government, you find quite a number of the district. Kwaido taken over by these people, Shafazane taken over. Most of these areas are actually under the control of this terrorist group. And they are, just like I said earlier, non-Nigerians. But the possibility of our local people supporting and joining them and accepting their ideology is actually on the increase, because they collect taxes. Not only collect these taxes, when they impose the taxes, they collect these taxes in cash, and they will also direct you. We are in so-so-so location, at so-so-so point. We want so-so-so amount to be submitted or to be given to us. And at the end of the day, you will be the one to take the money. To the extent that in Arugungu, in Augi, in some part of Kangiwa, and even part of Sokoto states, around Tangaza, around Gudu and Silami, they have established a network in which this network serve as their agents. They impose levies on you, 10 heads of your cattle, they will say you pay 200 or 300,000. If you want to pay, we are in Juma Jimmy, we are in Giragiri, we are in Raka, they will mention locations. And you see people submitting, collecting this money, paying to them directly. They even know where to see them. They have their agents, the motorcyclists, that actually take individuals to some of these places. So in my own opinion, it is a very serious threat beyond our imagination. And we really need a robust international collaboration. It's not just about the issue of Nigeria anymore. Rather, it is the issue of getting the support of international communities to deal with this particular threat. It is imminent, it is increasing, it is expanding, and rural communities are crying day in, day out about the activities of this group.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rufai, for giving us a detailed insight into the activities of this new terrorist group. We'll be back to you later, but let's come back.
I had wanted him, which he didn't quite respond to, the place of intelligence in all of this. That was my major question to him, and I wanted him to say, was there failure of intelligence, and what role can intelligence play at this point in time? At this point in time.
Okay, but maybe later, let's
failure of intelligence. I think the failure of intelligence. I think. From the beginning of their activities in 2017, 2018, around Tangaza, around Gidamadi, Masallachi, Mogonho, the Nigerian security agencies are fully aware of what is going on, because there was a very serious engagement between these people we call the Lakurawa and our security agencies. I think somewhere around 2019, 2020, they were dislodged from where they were operating and where they were occupying in, I think, somewhere around 2020 or 2021. They left. Now, what do we see? We see the second phase. The second phase is more radical, is more violent, is more entrenched than actually the first phase. And why do we know what we know? We know what we know because they have actually had an encounter with the communities, particularly in some part of Augi, specifically in Mera, where they kill 15 people. And these people that they kill were the local Hausa people that feel they have actually roasted our cattle. We really need to get our cattle back. That is when we know that these people are very powerful. But to be very frank and candid with you, there is actually a security and intelligence gap that needs to be filled urgently. My understanding of the whole issue is that for a very long period of time, we have not been doing what we're supposed to do. And today this threat is imminent, the failure is there, but we really need to act promptly and actively before it is actually getting too late. I know some people will say it is too late, but it is better done now than never. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rufai. It is better done now than never. But, just like you have heard, he has given us the details, insight into the activities of these new terrorist group. But let's consider the strategies now being employed by the by the government to counter this new terrorist group. We are looking back. You know, there was a peace summit in June with practical actions were proposed to address this Northwest security crisis. Why do you think that the impact of this resolution and to address this issue is not working, is not yielding the impact yet? We have not felt the impact. What strategies do you think we need to counter the activities of this terrorist group?
Okay, I want to make it absolutely clear that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have enough strategies, enough laws on ground to address our security challenges. With regards to terrorism, there are two strategies and one law that I would refer to. The number one is the National Counterterrorism Strategy that was published in 2016, that, if I'm right, is currently being reviewed. Now, that strategy provides the framework for countering terrorism, just like the name suggests. And when it was launched in 2016, I think the philosophy behind it was that force will be the principal means to address terrorism. But then immediately after, there was a realization that there were underlying factors that allow terrorism to breed. So in 2017, another document called PCVE, the policy document on countering violent extremism, was published. Now, the idea of that document was that soft power, you know, things like socio-economic conditions, radicalization, name them, will now be introduced. And it has various elements under it. The third one is the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, amended in 2022, which defined terrorism, defined acts and activities that contribute to terrorism, and more importantly, the punishment for anyone who engages in them. And also, very importantly, put up what was called a sanctions committee, which is chaired by the Attorney General of the Federation, with membership from different security organizations, if I'm right, about 14 of them. Now, the first strategy I mentioned, which is the National Counterterrorism Strategy, went ahead to create a coordinator counter-terrorism. And so today you have within the Office of the National Security Advisor, that office, a beautiful office with well-manned personnel from different organizations within the country. So my point is, we don't need anything new. We already have all that is required. Now, all of these three documents are revolving around 5 things, and I'll quickly mention them. Number one, they aim to forestall terrorism. Anything that would be terroristic, they have provisions within them to forestall it from happening. 2016, we're in 2024, and we have a threat, just like Dr. Murtala has mentioned, that is not only imminent, that if we don't address, a new theater of war will be created, just like we have in the Northeast. The second element within these three laws is to secure us. Because of time, I'm trying to reduce my words. Number three is to identify. In other words, anywhere anything terroristic emerges, those three laws were supposed to identify it. Then number 4 is to prevent. In other words, before any terroristic thing happens, take measures to prevent it. And then the last one is the implement component. So if you look at these 5 provisions within those 2 strategies and 1 law, why is it that in 2024, remember these things were introduced in 2016, in 2024 we now have this eminent threat? And I'll tell you the reason. And I think General Temlong did mention it. Accountability is largely missing within our security space. We need to introduce accountability. When all of these 3 elements were, these 3 quote-unquote strategies and the law were put forward, I don't think there was a strong monitoring and evaluation component within them that would have allowed us to periodically ask ourselves, where are we doing well? Are there gaps? If there are gaps, how do we correct it? If you allow me to do a poll, we are 4 here. How many of us have seen these 3 documents that I've mentioned? You are a journalist. If you pick the NAC test, National Counterterrorism Strategy, and the PCVE, journalists, the media is mentioned there. You are supposed to be the custodians of that document. The media are supposed to be the ones that would, through strategic communication, put it forward to Nigerians so that Nigerians can embrace it. The idea of the strategies and the law is that the market woman in Garki Market, in Silami, in Tangaza, if she sees a terroristic action, she should be able to call someone in security to say, I have seen something. But 10 years down the road, 8 years down the road rather, we haven't done that. So monitoring and evaluation is missing. The second reason why we're where we are.
Sorry to point you out. It was said in that report that in 2016, they noticed.
In fact, more than that, I'm being careful. I'm being careful because
the profiling did not.
I'm in a media station. The police and AIG would confirm this. The police came out to say that the Lakurawas are benign. They are not malignant. A report from Sokoto State Police Command did say that. And of course, this was in 2017, 2018, thereabout. So, point I'm trying to make, the second point, we focused on the Northeast. And for obvious reasons, Jamaat al-Islam al-Dawati wal-Jihad was operational in the Northeast. Islamic State in West Africa province was operational. So the entire focus of these 2 strategies and the law moved kind of to the Northeast. If we had done our strategic security analysis, putting into consideration the feed from our intelligence agencies, the NIA, the DIA, the DSS, we would have known that the hotbed for terrorism was the Sahel. And if you look at the Sahel and the fact that at least 7 states, northern states in Nigeria are within the Sahel, then we would have known it was just a matter of time before this group start incursion into Nigeria, which means the same strategies that we are implementing in the Northeast would have implemented in the Northwest. First, like remember the 5 elements I mentioned: forestall, secure, identify, prevent, and implement. If we had done that in the North, we would have known when the Lakurawas were becoming radicalized. I differ a little bit with Dr. Murtala. Initially, if we go with the statement of the police, and I have no choice but to support that statement by the police, that they were not radicalized at the initial stages. Again, it is there. A simple Google search will produce that statement by the Sokoto State Police Command telling you that that group was not radicalized initially. I have no choice but to believe that statement. Today, they are radicalized.
It's because he's on ground there. That's why he says
beyond that, he's a historian. I'm an intelligence analyst. So the meaning of radicalization may differ. So, but let's not go into that argument. Let's rely with what.
But who is supposed to implement? When you talk about security
the
strategies,
Office of the National Security
and why
Advisor.
does it seem that these things are not implemented?
The Office of the National Security Advisor, like I told you, under NAC test, you have a coordinator, counter-terrorism. Today, you have a substantive general who is heading that office. The idea is to galvanize us as Nigerians. When they say security is really by the people, the idea is bring everybody on board. That's why he's a coordinator. He's new in that office, so I'm not kind of putting the responsibility on him.
It's not the individual, it's the office.
It's the office, exactly. And the continuity that was envisaged when the entire NAC test was created, 2016. But the good thing is that it's due for review. I do hope that an M&E strategy will be implemented where, in fact, a simple SWOT analysis. What did we do well with the previous one? What didn't do well? How do we make sure that the average Nigerian... In fact, what even shocked me, I'm being careful, I'm on NTA, what shocked me is our governors. you will be surprised that if you invite governors, not many of them even know of the existence of this document that I've mentioned.
Because you're talking about governors, now I'm going to ask A.I. Jabutuyaro, retired. There was a peace and security summit in June in the Northwest. I'm not sure. It looks like you were at that summit. What was then discussed? What was found? And what was it, just a jamboree? Because that's what some people have called it.
Dr. Kebiru was there too.
Okay.
Were you not there? As somebody said in the Senate last time, say you were there and I was not there. But he was there. But in any case, what I'm trying to say is that, jokes apart, many things were said in ways and manners similar to what we're saying. You know, as Nigerians, we seldom run out of ideas. You know, and I know. Coordinating and translating these ideas to action seems, in my view, that is always
the problem,
our major problem. And the moment we correct it, the better for us, the better for fatherland. There's no way you can have a neighbor of over 1,000 kilometer land boundary and you are not in amity with that neighbor. You're only looking for the doomsday. We in West Africa were 16 countries. But of the 16 of us, we have the single stretch of largest border with a Sahelian neighbor. That alone has serious national security implications. Whether the form of government or the form of behavior in our neighbor's house contradicts our personal convenience, for our strategic survival, we must be in amity with that neighbor. That's the point I'm making. If you look at the Americans, there are some countries that they are strategic neighbors, even though they are not geographically contiguous. But they are strategic. Like what they used to teach us in ABU in the early 80s, that South Africa was a strategic neighbor of Nigeria during the liberation struggle. Even though we have a distance of over 6,000 kilometers in terms of land connectivity, because our interests and their own, at that time they were struggling, was intertwined. So we consider them to be strategic neighbors. I will have to work with them so that that interest will be achieved. Within the context of ECOWAS, we were the founding fathers. We're having the secretariat here in Asokoro. We are the frontline state in Africa. But as of today, with all truism, are we really the bonding apparatus of ECOWAS ideals now?
At least we cheer it.
I said bonding ideals is different from chairmanship. Bonding ideals is to see, are we really acting in a way to make all the other 15 ECOWAS states to feel subordinated, to feel aligned with us militarily, economically, psychologically, intelligently, or otherwise? We form ECOWAS because we believe that in West Africa, we Nigerians, we have about 60% stake in the human activity, the whole of West Africa. And that is why our earlier founding fathers of our country believed that we should use ECOWAS to advance our national security interest, our national economic interest, our national cultural interest. Have we really maximized it? Now, within that ECOWAS we hold, 4 or 5 cardinal members in the Sahel, they have now backward marched from ECOWAS. This backward march has a lot of implication on us. And part of it is what we are seeing physically now. Traversing terrorists in the Sahel, it must be stopped. And it cannot be stopped in a unilateral manner. We can't act in silos and give effect to securing it. We must have partnership, bilateral, multilateral, ECOWAS platform.
I agree with
Somebody said earlier from Sokoto or elsewhere that in 2017, they came, they retreated, and they came back. That's to say, they retreated into the Sahel, and they came back.
I agree with you that it has to stop, but we just have to stop at this point just so that we take a break. We are not stopping you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll go on a break, and when we return,
Thank
the conversation will continue. Please stay with us.
When we think about the digital economy, you can see it as the marketplace for digital goods and services. And increasingly, it's becoming a force to reckon with and an incredible contributor to economic growth, because we've seen the growth in technology and digital platforms. Technology has if it really permeated every aspect of life and business, the way we live, the way we work. And when we talk about the digital economy, we're really talking about leveraging technology and digital platforms in a powerful way to drive growth, to drive solutions to problems, to drive applications, and to provide services.
The digital economy is something that has the potential to help Nigeria leapfrog a lot of its development challenges, right? Because think about what the mobile phone did for Nigeria years ago. That is the potential we have for digital, because it has a way of reducing the barriers to innovation. It has a way of being able to transform service delivery, whether it's government's delivery of services or whether it's services in the health system, where people can use digital to actually be able to see their patients better. But it takes a lot to realize that potential of digital. The first thing is like every other thing, there's an infrastructure you have to build to be able to make sure that digital economy can thrive. Think of something like, capturing that happens in Nigeria, right? Where you capture, people's biometric when they go for a driver's license, when they go for passports, and each of those are separate things. Imagine a system where we're able to streamline that and actually have a platform that exchange biometric information that makes it easier for people to access passports, easier for people to register to vote. But today it's very tough, right? But those are basic infrastructure that needs to be invested in. A lot of it is through government and private sector collaborations to make it happen.
If we're looking to accelerate growth in the Nigerian space, we really need to look at enabling the digital economy. That includes providing digital infrastructure, connectivity, because that's the highway, like the highway that everything rides on. We need to think about digital capacity building in terms of the suppliers to the economy and also the consumers within the economy. So a robust digital literacy initiative. The good thing about technology is that, one, it helps you to transcend boundaries. Two, it creates a level playing field, really, because if you create a solution, a technology-based solution that is applicable in this environment, that same technology can be applicable, exported to other environments. And, technology platforms also help drive collaboration, right? When we're thinking about innovation, when we're thinking about business growth, collaboration is an important part of that. So when we think about the impacts with the rest of the world, we find that actually technology platforms are giving us an opportunity to engage more actively, to collaborate, to create partnerships, to even export our knowledge and services for people to engage with. All the great things I'm talking about technology and digital platforms, they need access, internet access, broadband access. So we need to make sure that access is more available and affordable for the average user.
The most important thing is to think about where you want to go as a country and actually what type of policies are going to help get you there. There are examples of countries who've been able to transform using digital, for example. There are very clear things those countries did to be able to make it happen. So a lot of this, the pathway to be able to solve these problems are not mysterious, right? It takes courage of the policymakers to be able to understudy some of these things and bring in the policies that work to be able to help them.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. We're still discussing tackling this new terrorist group. Now let's go to Jos, where we have General Temlong. And from the discussion here, it's obvious that our security agencies need international cooperation. And what role, let's now consider the role that global intelligence, intelligence sharing can play in this, in disrupting terrorist network, especially how can regional organizations such as ECOWAS, for instance, help Nigeria, support Nigeria in counter-terrorism?
Well, thank you very much. Terrorism already is an international crime against humanity. So the sharing of intelligence on terrorism or terrorist activities is an international affair. But you see, the important thing is not just the sharing of intelligence, because what Dr. Kabir said about the policy documents that we have, it's quite unfortunate that those who are supposed to operate them do not even know of their existence. I'll sure bet my pension for that. So the issue of governance itself is at the core of these things, because governance at the state, governance at the local levels, they are the core. You see, these things started at that level. And if governance was actually up and doing, and then they knew what they were doing, there are certain measures that they can even take at community levels to be able to dislodge these people or distance themselves before they go into a very big and strong and monstrous organization. So I think we need to do that. If you look at almost all the states that have conducted what they call local government elections, the outcome of it is as good as what you think it is, because all the parties that are in power in those states installed local government chairmen and councillors that they were. And so are they actually this thing? But do these local government chairmen, are they accountable to the citizens, or they are accountable to the governors? Now that they are there, do they even know about these policy documents that are available? How do they build the capacity of the communities to be able to know or identify, to forestall, to report? What are the reporting lines? Apart from the ones that Dr. Kabir mentioned, you have the national security policy strategy. You have the national defense policy, which talks about the citizens' involvement in national defense and the rest. So what are those things to that extent? It's not just we coming here. Yes, we talk about them every day. I know Dr. Kabir is passionate about them. I've been talking about them too, but I think we are just beating about, because the whole thing is that, is it going down the line? Are they serious about them? At the state level, you don't even have a national security or a state security staff. They rely on the heads of the security agencies that are posted there. A civil servant is posted as the PAMSEC security. Some states now have started having what they call security advisor, but what staff do they have? How do they interact with those security agencies? Is there any analysis that they're able to subject and do, and how, to what extent do they even have access to governors? At the local government level, do they have anything like that? So you see, we must think of replicating what are at the center to be able to able to tackle this situation at the government at those levels. So I think those are the most important thing. No matter the intelligence you get and you pass them down, they are not being able to use them because they are not even trained. They don't have the capacity to use them. So I think we need beyond that, because that's why you found that whenever you have the kinetic efforts having successes, the soft power components are not complementing the kinetic efforts. And in fact, the whole thing is supposed to be a soft power component, the governance issues. The kinetic is just there to say, look, stop, do this, and then the soft power takes over. Governance issues. So I think that's this thing. But the important thing, like the AIG did mention, which I did mention too, is that, look, what is our national interest? What is our strategic interest with these countries? America will go to war to defend democracy. But America has the best of relations with the Arab or Gulf states, which are not democracies. What is in their own national interest? So what is our own destiny that we have neighbors that are contiguous to us and that we must try and bring them back into the ECOWAS fold? Because keeping them outside, allowing them to drift outside of the ECOWAS fold is not in our own national security interest, especially Nigeria, which has acted as a hegemon and has projected power to Liberia and Sierra Leone to be able to stop the domino effect of the crisis from spilling into the other West African states and making Nigeria itself untenable. So what do we do now? I think we need to reevaluate our strategy. We need to reevaluate our stand on these other countries to see how we can get them back into the fold. It has to be a very serious, and Nigeria must take the lead. Like we know, it is Nigeria that started the ECOWAS thing along with Togo. Togo doesn't have the clout like Nigeria. And Nigeria has also been seen as the hegemon in the area. We provide the headquarters, we provide all this, and I think we will be the biggest losers when we allow these people to go the way they want to go. So.
All right, General Temlong, we thank you very much for your contribution. Let me quickly get back to Sokoto, where we have Dr. Rufai. And I just want to, we've talked a lot about the issues, what led to it, how it emerged, but where do we go from here? Is the solution diplomatic? Is it military, or is it both?
Thank you very much. I think the solution requires both the kinetic and the non-kinetic aspects. At the moment, communities, just like I said earlier, are increasingly becoming polarized with the issue of mistrust and distrust along the border. What is far more important now is the issue of community reconciliation, finding the way of actually bringing these communities together, because it is now reinventing the idea of the farmer-herder dispute or the farmer-herder conflict that we know. The Hausa people along this particular border point accusing fingers on the pastoral communities or the Fulani that they are responsible, they are agents of this terrorist group. And I think that is something that needs to be stopped actually very urgently, or else we are actually going to see a new wave of the farmer-herder conflict, because this issue of the Lakurawa, there is the theory and the idea that they were invited, and when they came in, they actually did what they did with the support of the local pastoralists. And today, we've seen them also engaging and recruiting their own local informants that provide them with local and also village intelligence. So what is important now is to conduct a deeper threat analysis of this particular quote and unquote new group, because it is identified as a new group. But I feel a boy of 8, you can't call him a baby boy anymore. But the issue actually, and the fact also remains that we need to have this idea of buying in and keying in of rural and the local communities over what we are doing, because a portion or a fraction of the local communities in the affected areas have no faith. I'm sorry to use the word issue of having no faith on the Nigerian security system or on the Nigerian states, simply because of the idea of this ungoverned and undergoverned spaces. So all we really need to do now is to go into a massive campaign, bringing back these communities, let them know the impact of what they are doing, let them also see the threats of this idea of creating a state within a state. Then looking at the kinetic approach, there is no way we are going to have a successful kinetic operations without the buy-in in of the locals. Because initially, these people were living in the forest, but we have seen them gradually pushing into communities. And the same terrorist group that we're talking about have this sense of the issue of the collateral damage. And on that basis, they get closer to communities, infuse into the communities, so as in an event of air raid and air strike, or the air warfare, for instance, they will increase the rate of the collateral damage. In other words, both kinetic and the non-kinetic approach needs to be harmonized and needs to be done concurrently. At the moment, what we need is intelligence. And for us to get this intelligence, in my opinion, we really need to go on the ground. We need to get the people that are directly involved, to get the names, the locations, as well as the nature and pattern of these activities. Our attention, just like I said earlier, is focused on Sokoto and Kebbi. But believe in me, the threat is far beyond these 10 LGAs that we talk about. Why is it an issue in these LGAs? Is because of the recent happenings. But I also have the belief that similar activities and the presence of this group, for instance, is actually going on in other places that is still unknown. So the sooner we identify the gravity of this threat and we address it in the both kinetic and the non-kinetic manner, I think the better for us. And not only that, just like Dr. Kabir has actually mentioned and other speakers, I feel what is important is getting the buy-in of our immediate neighbor, Niger Republic. Because communities along this border are now moving to pass their nights, sleep in their immediate neighbor in the Niger Republic. Simply because of what? Simply because of the threat of the Lakurawa. You see a kilometer difference between Nigerian side and Nigerian side. But on the Nigerian side, you trek down to Niger, you sleep there, you pass your night comfortably, and then if you come back to Nigeria, what do you see? You see the threats of this Lakurawa. In these communities, we've seen pockets of banditry, but the Lakurawa have succeeded in dealing with the bandits. But my major concern here is the dividing line between the Lakurawa and the bandit is very thin. In an event of aggressive military operations, that is within the kinetic context, we expect an alliance, we expect a collaboration, and we expect synergy between some of these bandit groups and also this terrorist group. More so, they share a lot of things in common in terms of language, in terms of operational strategy, in terms of even issues around sharing of intelligence. I think what is important in terms of the solution is now win the hearts and the minds of the locals, because there is no way we are going to succeed in the kinetic approach or operations without the locals. And then these locals are gradually becoming inclined and in support of this terrorist group, unless and until we deal with this issue, this division, this mistrust, this distrust, and the issue of misinformation and disinformation. I don't think we are going to get it right.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rufai, for your submission there. So how, let's come back to Dr. Kabil now. Getting the local engaged in this fight against this new terrorist group. Earlier on, when you were talking about these different strategies, you mentioned the role of education. Many of us don't know. We don't know. We are not educated. We don't know how to even go about all these things. So how can education and economic empowerment help, especially the local communities, in this fight against this terrorist group?
Okay, with the little time at my disposal, I'll quickly mention that earlier on you asked me about the conference in Katsina,
Yes,
on the northwest. All these issues were identified.
Okay.
The military component and then the soft component, socio-economic conditions, education, population, name them, environmental, of course, climate change and all of that. So these are issues that have to be addressed. They all, in one way or the other, impact the communities. I've had the misfortune, I would even say, of visiting our border areas. There is a place in Sokoto, I've forgotten the name of that local government, Kebi, I think, that shares borders with three countries. Niger, Benin Republic. In fact, you are in that community. On the one hand, you see Benin Republic. On the other hand, you see Niger. And then, of course, Nigeria. So in such a community where there is no governance, no schools, no water, no electricity. Imagine a situation where a terrorist group now comes to offer them ₦1 million.